So guys, here we go once again. Another week, another rodent damaged Subaru. So guys, here we are once again, a week after fixing that rodent damage on that customer's Subaru sandbar, and we've got another Subaru with more rodent damage to the engine wiring harness. This time a 2015 Outback 2.5i Limited, and it appears to be Squirrels as there's a plethora of acorn shells under the hood, and the owner claims to have seen squirrels running back and forth from underneath the vehicle. Now, I'm not sure exactly what the deal is. I assume the extreme cold and snow we got this year in the Southeast, which is not normal, is partly to blame. But regardless, we now have issues to fix. We got warning lights on, we've got check engine light on, we got a lot of stuff to go through. So first thing we're gonna do is get the scan tool booted up, hook it up and do a full system code scan on this to see what may or may not have been affected by the rodent's damage to the wiring harness, and then assess what we're gonna do in fixing the damage done. So let's go ahead and jump under the hood, or jump in the car and start with that scan. So guys, we'll go ahead and turn the key on, and you can see the amount of warning lights and check engine light and things we got going on here. Quite a bit lit up. So as I said, we'll hook up our scan tool and go through a full system scan. Today we are using the new Autel Ultra S2. We'll do a full review on that in a later date. Compare it to our old first generation Autel Ultra. So go ahead, North America, Subaru Outback, read the VIN, okay. Establishing communication. Sorry about the glare, there's a kind of glary screen. Fault scan, all that's good. And we'll go through, check everything on the topology here and see how much red we have, how many faults we have. Now, I did go through and scan this the other day. There's quite a few codes on as we see it light up really red, and lots of, troublesome things. So let's hit the list and go through what we got here. Again, apologies for the glare on the screen. So first off, we got knock sensor 1, PO327, P0328, current and history codes for the knock sensor. We got ABS codes, we got some C codes over here, left hand actuator circuit, power supply circuit, electrical control module, history codes. We got 9 history codes in the combo meter for communication, loss of communication, etc. We got 4 in the body control module for power control supply, battery faults, etc. All these are history codes. We got 1 for the occupancy detection. That is a history code. We've got 3 history codes for refrigerant flow sensor circuit open, variable solenoid valve circuit, and heater control panel communication error. We've got 3 fault codes in the right hand side or right rear vehicle detection, lost communication in the left hand side, 3 histories there. A history code in the Bluetooth module for infotainment, and a history for the seat power communication. So lots of history codes, only 1 current code for our knock sensor circuit, but we'll get under the hood and see what's going on. I've basically looked at it already and know basically what's going on. So knock sensor we'll focus on, and we'll focus on our air conditioning, looking at the variable solenoid valve circuit. Really quickly before we get to the actual damage over here, let's take a look at evidence. We have tons of shells built up over here on the strut tower on the driver's side, all around the top of the cowl, all around to the strut tower on the passenger side, right here around the ABS control module. We also have quite a few right here at the damage point. So this is the wiring for the variable displacement AC compressor's solenoid. That solenoid is what varies the output of this compressor due to it being a continuously variable output. There is no electromagnetic clutch on here. This compressor constantly turns, and a solenoid varies the amount of output this compressor has in this kind of system. So that wiring is completely gone from here to here. And then our other code was for the knock sensor. So we got the knock sensor right down here, The wiring is tattered, should connect to here. Luckily, being a 2015 Outback 2.5, I own a 2015 Outback 2.5 in the same color and all, and we can use it as a reference. Here is that wiring. Here is how it's supposed to go attached to this this harness right here that ties into the alternator and the AC. It's all in together and coming around here. So this is what is damaged and missing from that part of the harness. And then down here, again, we can see our knock sensor down here as it comes up and into the harness there that goes over the coolant crossover pipe. So that's what we need to focus on right this second. Those are codes related to these two circuits, the knock sensor circuit there being open and that variable displacement solenoid circuit being open. That's our two right here. We also have tons of acorn shells way down here in the belly pan. If my camera would focus, come on, you can do it. Focus. Tons of acorn shells down here. I also have some insulation. Now, this insulation is not from the hood liner. This is where they like to steal it a lot to nest in. It is, however, back here on top of the CVT. So on around to the side of the engine here, we have this insulation blanket that sits over top of the cover plate for the valve body on this TR580 CVT. Now, there's a lot of important wiring harnesses to the CVT here, and you know, they've been eating at this insulation. If I can get it to focus, once again, my camera is not wanting to participate here, but a lot of that insulation there has been removed. There's acorn shells back here. If they got into those wiring harnesses, we could have a big mess with the CVT. The customer had it towed here, did not drive it, so we might discover a plethora of issues with the driveline CVT that we didn't know because it wasn't driven, just keyed on. So luckily we have no circuit codes for that. We would have gotten circuit codes for that at key on. The computer should have checked for a lot of that stuff. We got these because they're open circuits, but we're going to do an investigation back there, take that insulation blanket off, take the intake tube off here, and get at that and do an inspection of that after we have this repaired. Now, another thing I noticed is right here. Some of you might not realize or see the issue, but quite a gap here between our intake boot and our air box where our mass airflow sensor is. Any kind of air leak here will cause an issue, cause a check engine light for a lean code because unmetered air is coming in right here. This should be flush together. Now I wiggled it, it's tight, or it appears to be tight. Can't really push this around, but we will loosen this up and shove it up here where it should be, as I'll demonstrate how it should be on my 2015, right there. That should be flush, no gap. So to make this repair a little easier on me and a little easier on you guys to observe, we're going to start by taking off the belt guard here. Probably going to unbolt the AC compressor, leaving the refrigerant intact and the lines intact, and kind of bunging it over out of the way, as well as taking the belt tensioner and alternator off and bunging them kind of out of the way. So we got a more easy to film, more easy area to work in on that knock sensor wiring and this variable output solenoid for the compressor. So let's go ahead and get into that. Actually, before we get into that, I'm gonna try to clean up our work area a little bit and get rid of some of this debris. All right, that's much nicer, much cleaner under here to go ahead and start digging in. And today to aid us, we'll be using the new 3rd gen Milwaukee M12 ratchets here. And just try to do a general inspection as we move along. Definitely going to recommend a new serpentine belt on this. Looks like it might be factory. It's a 15 with 127,000 some odd miles. There's part of our wiring harness that bridged across here. Since we're messing with the alternator, this is a great time to go ahead and disconnect the negative lead of the battery. Set that back out of the way where it won't accidentally reconnect. Some more acorns and nuts and things under here. Brush those out of the way. I think we're actually good just getting the alternator away to get to this wiring. And we should be good here to get to this wiring, so we shouldn't need to mess with anything else really to make our life easier. Now, I would advise if you're working on a similar condition, just be wary of your hands, cutting yourself, and possible contamination from the rodent feces and urine that might be present. So gloves would be recommended, but if not, like I just went and rubbing alcohol in my hands, cleaning myself with wipes periodically throughout this. So now that's out of the way, you can see what we got to do here. We've got to reattach our knock sensor pigtail here to the wiring harness here. That's a fairly easy to access, and if we need to add a little bit of wiring in there, we can. Next is this pigtail here. As you can see, they ate it down to the nub. So what you'd really want to do here is hit up a Subaru wiring specialist like iWire and just order a new pigtail. Now, this is a quick, fast, in a hurry, cheap, and dirty repair. So we will be depinning this connector, opening this up, and soldering new wires onto these pins. Now, normally, I'd go ahead and build a new harness with new pins and new bushings here on new wiring, but I don't have any pins right now spare, so we're going to work with what we got. And then our wiring from that leads into the harness here, which is pretty much non-existent. So we will be opening up this loom, giving ourselves more room, and tacking on that extra wire to make it over and give us some slack to work with. So let's get at it. First off with depinning this connector. Now, I'm not sure how well I can show you what I'm doing. You need a depinning tool and a little bit of patience, but what we're going to do is go in here and pull this lock up first and pull that out of our way, and then you can slide your depinning tool in and disengage these little tabs while pulling slightly on the wire in the back, and it should pop out each one, and then we'll assess what we've got going on and how much wire we have to work with or what we're going to do once we get them out. So we'll go ahead and do that and come back. So now that we got the lock pulled all the way out, as you saw on the front of the connector there, the lock plate to keep the locks from coming loose, there are little plastic tabs you really can't see on camera, but if you look in real life, you can shine a light in there. There's little plastic tabs. You take your D-pin tool and you lift up on that tab. It allows the pins to slide out. Now, these are what we have left of the pins. Normally, like I said, I would take some new primary wiring, appropriately gauged, and crimp it onto a new pin, slide in the connector, boom, ready to go. But I don't have any spare pins right now, so I'm going to try to butcher this back together. We'll pull the boot off after opening up the little clamp here, exposing what wire we have left, and either solder on or try to uncrimp and crimp new wires in here without totally mangling and destroying those pins. Get it back in there and have ourselves a new pigtail to work with, and then we'll splice, solder that into that main harness. So we've opened up the crimp here and pulled the weather boot off that seals the back of the connector. Now this pin, we've got just some braided wire. This one, we've got a little bit of insulation left. Either one we could really go into and solder a wire onto, slide that boot back on, crimp it in place, and then seal that any bare exposure with liquid electrical tape. That's probably what I'm going to do here to recreate this pigtail. Like I said, with what I've got, working with what I got, not the correct proper procedure of replacing the pin and creating new pigtails with fresh wire and a fresh pin. So guys, there's the first pin soldered onto a new pigtail. We'll slide the insulator boot up, crimp it back into place, and use liquid electrical tape on the boot to seal that back in and keep any junk from getting up on that wire. And we'll go ahead and cut ourselves a good long length of this wire to scabber into the pigtail or the harness, more or less, on the car. And we'll go ahead and repeat this with the second pin as well. So there it is, completed. Now onto that second pin. All right, guys, and there we got it, our repaired pigtail. Again, not the best way to do it, not soldering onto stubs, but putting new wires on new crimped ends, new pins, and popping them in. So we got them in, they're locked. We've got our weather seals at the back here. Everything is covered up. Should be good. Put that lock in the front, and we'll get to integrating this back into the factory wiring harness. All right, guys, so our new pigtail is made, ready to plug in here, but we gotta get it over here. So, like I said before, the wires are very short. So we're gonna take our little seam ripper here and open up this harness, open up this loom, and get at some more meat to solder onto to do this repair. And we'll have to fix our damage we create along the way. I'm not sure how much we need to expose here, but we'll work our way back. And we got our black wire, we got our blue wire, and you know, we'll just keep working at it until we free up enough space that we can get in here and get at this to make the repair. So I'll bring you guys back once I've got this filleted open and we're kind of set up to start integrating this newly repaired pigtail. All right, guys, so we've got it pulled back enough where we got a good amount of working area for these wires. So we're gonna cut these ends, restrip them, strip these ends, and get them set up in the jig to make this wiring repair. And we'll go ahead and wrap the loom back, wrap all this back, and try to find some loom to put over this. I don't know if I've got any right now or not. Kind of unprepared for electrical repair right now. All right, so we got our black and our, I believe, blue with yellow stripe, and we're gonna be matching that black to black and yellow to blue with yellow stripe. So we'll go ahead and get our soldering jig set up and get to working on this. All right, our little snap-on soldering jig is in place. Pop a little flux in here and get ready with our soldering iron. One of my favorites, the Milwaukee M12, just super convenient and handy. I know a lot of people think it's bulky, but in a lot of areas I've gotten it into, had no real complaint. So got to let it get back up to temperatures. It cooled after we did the pin repair on the pigtail. So hopefully I can show you guys this without getting in the way and blocking, but if I can't, sorry. A lot of people think this helping hand is unneeded, but I do find that it kind of blocks the heat travel up the wire so it doesn't prematurely shrink your heat shrink. So we got this one done, and we'll swap over into our black wire, heat shrink, and try to get everything where it needs to be. And there we go. Got both sets of wires soldered, connected, spliced together, wrapped together, fluxed. We'll bring our heat shrink tubing down. I'll try to, might have made a little bit of a mess for myself. Getting the shorter pieces out of the longer pieces. There we go. Got one of them out. And the other one out. We'll cover up those joints, just like so. Heat them up to cover them. And there we go. Little overkill, but got the job done. So we'll go ahead and integrate this. We're going to wrap this solder joint flat and then pull it back so we don't put stress on that solder joint as we rewrap this and pull this loom back up and rebuild this harness. All right, so we've got all that rewrapped, looking good. Alternator sits right about here. This plug will sit here, a little dip, basically exactly how it was from the factory. So we can now pull this on out of our way and get down here to where this knock sensor is. All right, so the knock sensor is in kind of a precarious spot to show you guys, but we might be able to repair it a little bit easier than that because the pigtail is still intact. So I'm gonna go ahead and unplug the pigtail or the connector here, or try to. There we go, got it out of the way. Inspect for damage. I don't think we got any damage in this section. I think it's just right back here. So once we get that, we can basically solder or try to. I don't know if it'll be an issue with this being a knock sensor and that having that shielded wire there, if this will be an issue, but should be able to connect here, and rewrap it and be done with this repair completely, aside from reassembly. So guys, this is all soldered together. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show you due to the short length of wire and how deep in here it was. Just, it wasn't feasible to get the camera, soldering iron, my hands, everything in here. We got it repaired just the same as we did before. There is no heat shrink on here. These were too short. I don't think I would have been able to get it without it, shrinking. I'm going to do liquid electrical tape, coat these wires in liquid electrical tape to seal them in. Once that's done, we'll wrap the shielding wire around, liquid electrical tape that on, and then we will retwist these wires around, tape them up, and plug it back in, and we should be good to go, electrically speaking, up here. And then we got to check that CVT valve body plate and that harness coming out back there. First layer of liquid tape on there. We'll let that set up and add a second layer and close this all up. So while the liquid tape sets up, we got the intake off here, and looking around, they gnawed out the corner here and gnawed out some of it here, but does not appear that any wiring damage was done back here. So really good signs as far as the customer's concerned on the damage. So that's far and away from one of my best wiring repairs. I didn't have any more of this corrugated loom, but I used this X-Fasten tape. It's a fabric tape like Testa tape, but actually sticks. And wrap that, should be good there. We're good there. What we gotta do now is throw that alternator back on, belt on, and hook the battery up and see what codes pop back up. Hopefully none, fingers crossed. All right, so our wiring is set. Our intake boot, our intake plenum, tubing, hosing is back in place. Just gonna set the alternator back in place, hook the harness back up, reconnect the battery, and hopefully be trouble light and code free. So guys, unfortunately, as soon as I tightened that last bolt, I had some friends show up to the farm. Haven't seen them since before my wife and I's wedding. So hung out with them for quite a while talking until it got dark and couldn't finish filming. But got the battery hooked up. All the codes and lights are gone. Of course, they cleared on that battery being disconnected. Went and did a test drive. Everything worked as it should. We are all good on this repair with our newly replaced pigtail here and repaired wiring down there. All good on that front, and we really lucked up with no damage to the wiring for the CVT. Now, a lot of you asked in the prior video on that sandbar, what can be done to prevent this? What preventative measures can we be doing to keep rodents out from under the hood and costing expensive, damaging wiring repairs? So I don't firsthand know myself because I really haven't had an issue with it other than my Subarus down in my junkyard that are stored long term. But I've heard that Irish Spring soap, putting a couple bars under the hood, can help deter rodents, peppermint oil on cotton balls, and I have heard so much as a fox urine or some kind of predator urine, although I don't think I'd want to put that under here because it's going to eventually migrate into the cabin and I wouldn't want that scent inside the car. So something a little more friendly to your nose, the Irish Spring or the peppermint oil, would probably be the way I'd go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for future Subaru and tool content. I'll see you guys in the next one.